Brilliantly styled, smartly finished, and powered by one of the better diesel engines in its class, the Ford Kuga is a crossover that takes as many sales from Nissan Qashqai or Peugeot 3008 class cars as it does from soft roaders like Toyota's RAV4 or Honda's CR-V. Try one and it's easy to see why, especially now that a pokier, more efficient engine range has brought its on-paper credentials into line with its on-tarmac ones. For a company that has counted on sports utility vehicles for such a huge part of its global earnings, Ford has had a surprisingly patchy record with the things in the UK until 2008 and the arrival of this model, the Kuga. Now, back then, so-called crossovers, cars with the styling of an SUV and the sense of a family hatchback, were an emerging trend that almost every brand has since had to follow. This one copied the approach of Nissan Qashqai class alternatives, but added a butcher look and a better driving experience, a combination that saw Ford garner over 20,000 sales in less than 2 years. But times change quickly in fashionable market sectors like this one. By 2010, with an army of new rivals launched against it, the Kuga needed a refresh with more powerful, fuel-efficient engines required to complement the two-wheel drive and petrol options that Ford had introduced since the original version's launch. Now, thus equipped, a car that was already pretty in tune with its times has become more so, and remains a model that crossover customers still find difficult to ignore. Let's find out why. Just after the turn of the century, after years of bringing over US market SUVs that simply weren't suited to the more dynamic driving experience demanded by European customers, someone at Ford finally realised that a different approach was called for. What might be created, they wondered, if the platform of their Focus family hatchback were to be slightly enlarged to carry a taller SUV-style body, yet one still retaining the Focus's class-leading multi-link rear suspension and enhanced by on-demand grip from Haldex clutch-controlled drive to the rear wheels. This Kuga was their answer. Years after its introduction, rival Qashqai class crossover models still haven't caught up with the quality of its road-going experience, and RAV4 or Freelander type soft-roading compact 4x4s are well behind. Now, the reasons why have much to do with the quality of this design's Focus underpinnings that contribute to standards of ride, steering and body control never before seen in this class of car. Now, not that it can completely cheat the laws of physics, of course. The fact that it's 1/4 of a tonne heavier and 1/4 of a metre higher than its family hatch stablemate becomes immediately apparent once you start to throw the thing around, though to be fair, not until. Still, no Focus is going to be much use on the kind of rutted, muddy farm track this Kuga will take in its stride thanks to its extra ground clearance and Haldex clutch-based all-wheel drive system. This normally diverts all of its power frontwards, but can push up to 50% of the engine's output to the rear axle if lack of traction demands it. And there are no fiddly knobs, buttons or levers to manipulate. The whole operation is completely seamless, which offers welcome extra peace of mind on the kind of wet or icy mornings or snowy days like this one that characterise this car's preferred tarmac habitat. You shouldn't, after all, be fooled by the front and rear skid plates and tall SUV stance. This is no serious off-roader. Tarmac types made it pretty clear to Ford that they were looking for more performance than the original 134 brake horsepower TDCi diesel variants were able to offer. Now, the Blue Oval's response was initially a little half-hearted. A 200 PS 2.5 litre petrol variant that almost no one in this car's target market could afford to run on a daily basis, and a two-wheel drive variant that shed some weight but lost a lot of the peace of mind capability that created Kuga customers in the first place. In mid-2010 though, a package of engine revisions arrived that was much better suited to customers' needs. There was a cleaner, pokier 140 PS version of the TDCi 2-litre engine, and that same unit was also offered with 163 PS to enable Ford to take on the fastest of its rivals. This derivative able to get from rest to 60 in 9.3 seconds on the way to a top speed of 121 miles an hour. And both 2-litre TDCi models were offered with the option of Ford's clever 6-speed PowerShift twin-clutch transmission. It's one of those clever auto gearboxes that pre-engages the next gear before you've even finished with the last one for smooth, seamless progress. Visually, anything SUV-like tends to polarise opinion. Either it's so ridiculously macho that you feel the need to start chewing tobacco and killing your own food in order to drive the thing, or it's so self-consciously suburban that you'll end up looking like a harassed school-run mum. Neither's ideal, of course, so it's just as well that right from the beginning, the Kuga has taken a different approach. Here's one of those rare things, a motor show concept car that actually looks better in production reality, with a fluid shape that suggests motion and makes you want to drive it. Design team head Britton Martin Smith claims that the inspiration for the shape came from sporting equipment and sports shoes, but whatever the truth, it's a design that hits just the right balance between sporting aggression and nuggety cuteness. As for the cabin, well, the news that this car is 6mm longer, 3mm wider and a substantial 250mm higher than the Focus that it's based on might understandably lead you to expect more space than is actually on offer. Bigger adults might struggle a bit for legroom in the rear, and it would be a bit of a squash for 3 adults across the back seat, but 2 should be quite comfortable here, provided that they're not of basketball playing height. Out back, there's a separately opening rear screen that makes it easy to throw in smaller items like shopping bags or sports equipment. If you open the full screen, you'll find 360 litres of space here, which is actually a bit less than you get in an ordinary Focus. But the Kuga does regain an advantage when you push forward the 60/40 split folding rear seats to release 1,355 litres of fresh air. There's also storage compartments under the second seating row and under the boot floor. At the wheel, you sit 80mm higher than you would in a Focus, and perceptually, for the target market, that will of course make all the difference. Crossover customers sold on this more commanding view will possibly be a bit surprised to find that the otherwise excellent all-round vision isn't quite as noticeable when you're trying to reverse. Wide rear 3/4 pillars see to that. Still, they should like the nicely crafted dash with its intuitive instrument layout and carefully chosen brightwork. If the prospect of snowy conditions like these makes you fancy a Ford Kuga, then expect a budget somewhere in the £21,000 to £28,000 bracket, depending on the model you need and the specification you choose. There's quite a tempting £1,500 saving if you order the TDCi 140 PS model with 2-wheel drive rather than 4-wheel drive. But if you are looking at an all-wheel driven approach, then make sure you try the 163 PS engine as well as the 140 model, just to see if you can justify its £2,000 premium. Petrol people will need to budget well over £25,000 for the 200 PS 2.5 litre version. Now, you might think, looking at these prices, that they're well above crossover rivals, and you'd be right, but that's only because Ford doesn't bother with feebly powered entry-level engines or poverty-spec versions. If you actually compare like with like, then you'll find that, for example, a 2-wheel drive TDCi 140 Kuga is actually about the same as an equivalent Peugeot 3008 HDI 150. As for 4-wheel drive, well, a Kuga TDCi 140 with all-wheel drive commands a premium of about £1,500 to £2,000, more than a comparable crossover like a Skoda Yeti or a Mitsubishi ASX with equivalent kind of power under the bonnet. And like all crossovers, this Kuga can save you substantially on a comparable soft-roading SUV like a Toyota RAV4 or a Honda CR-V. Whichever Kuga variant you order, from the 2-wheel drive TDCi 140 through 140 and 163 PS variants with 4-wheel drive, right through to the minority interest 200 PS 2.5 litre petrol version, you should find it to be decently equipped. All models come with air conditioning, alloy wheels, an MP3 and iPod compatible CD stereo, heated powered door mirrors, a leather trimmed steering wheel and front fog lights. Plus, of course, there's plenty on the options list, including a huge panoramic glass roof with twin blinds and a neat 230 volt connector that enables things like laptops to be used on the back seats. Plus, of course, the 6-speed dual clutch PowerShift automatic transmission. Safety-wise, you get 6 airbags, stability control, the latest electronic braking and traction control systems, and a system that, in a high-speed frontal crash, will move the steering wheel sideways and away from the driver. The mid-2010 engine updates got the Kuga back on track in this regard, just when it seemed to be slipping behind some of its crossover rivals. So it is that the improved 2-litre TDCi 140 PS engine returns 47.1 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 159 grams per kilometre of CO2. The same figures that you'll get in the 163 PS version, in fact, despite its extra power. You won't, though, save very much by opting for the TDCi unit with 2-wheel drive. The differences are really only marginal here. If you must have petrol power, then the 200 PS 2.5 litre petrol unit returns 234 grams per kilometre of CO2 and 28.5 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. Insurance groups range between 18 and 24. Gone are the days when Ford struggled to bring us a credible European SUV. Now it doesn't have to bother to. This Kuga's crossover class remit has suited the company much better, enabling its designers to borrow closely from the engineering expertise that has made their more conventional cars so successful. With a cleaner, more powerful range of engines, this is more than ever a 4-wheel drive car that it's almost impossible to take exception to, especially if you order it without 4-wheel drive. Like its contemporaries, it's aimed at the urban rather than the Amazon jungle, but unlike rival contenders, it can reward on twisty tarmac as well as on the straight stuff. It rules the top end of the crossover segment, and you can see why.